All right, welcome back in, everyone, to the Go 247 podcast. I am Glenn West, the senior writer here at the site. Once again, joined by Dylan Sanders, our contributing writer, and currently on vacation, Dylan Sanders. LSU has off the rest of the week here for fall break. Dylan, how are you been enjoying your 24 hours of freedom?
Oh, it's been so good. I've barely had to look at my grade book and see how people are grading. No, it's been good. It's been chill. It's Halloween season, so I'm watching a bunch of Halloween content.
Good.
I love horror movies. I love this type of time of year, but it's also great because there's so much sports happening right now.
Yeah, it's getting to be that time of right in the heat of SEC play. We'll get into a couple of the matchups later on in the pod, but first off, of course, we got to touch on LSU and Florida. But before we do that, just make sure you guys are subscribing to YouTube, hitting that like button, subscribing wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple or Spotify. All that stuff helps us as we try to grow this thing out. So, with that, LSU has its second SEC game of the season on the road, I should say, in Gainesville, as the Tigers will head back to where there was some pretty entertaining. It was a pretty entertaining matchup the last time these two teams battled it out in Gainesville. There was a shoe, there was fog, there was a near 60-yard field goal to end things. Um, don't know what we're going to expect this week. I don't think special teams will play as prominent a role in this one, but maybe they will. You never know.
Maybe not in a good way, but
Yeah,
they,
exactly. Maybe
you
not in the way
never
we're
know.
thinking. Yeah.
Oh.
With that, we'll certainly get our thoughts here on LSU Florida. We've had a nice chance to talk with Coach Kelly a couple times. Spoken with a few players as well, coming off that tough Tennessee loss. Just a couple of quick takeaways from me. Team seems to be in still very high spirits. I think with everybody we've talked to, they you always run the risk with a game like that of potentially having some friction in the locker room, but it doesn't sound like anything like that's happened. They've actually had more player meetings, more player-led meetings this week, which you really like to see. These guys really take control of their performances, and then look, everybody understands. I think last week was not to the execution and to the standard that they were hoping for against Tennessee, but that's why you have another week here of college football. You get another opportunity to play, and look, I think this is a favorable matchup for LSU. I think there's a reason that Florida is only favored by 2.5, 3 points in this game. I think LSU is going to have its opportunities in the run game to potentially open up some holes. I think they're going to have to defend the run against Florida. I guess we can just start offensively because that's always the hot topic here. It appears this season, but I think this is going to be a huge game for the LSU run game. I really do. I think it's going to be a get-right game. I think being able to have Will Campbell back in this lineup, you really felt that last week when you didn't have him, at that left tackle spot. But I think having him back it will potentially help LSU as they try to get this thing moving in the right direction. I mean, I think at this point, I'm just hoping for not even a fast start. If we could just get a lukewarm start to the game, I think I'd be happy on offense. It's just been a real tough stretch for them in terms of trying to get off on the right foot. I would say just moving the sticks, getting a couple first downs, chewing up some clock, even if it doesn't result in points right away. Just doing things that doesn't beat yourself, I think, is what I'm really looking for early in this game. But Dylan, just offensively, where kind of you at with this group and kind of what they need to lean into this week against Florida?
Yeah, well, Florida has Florida's defense is okay. They're not to the to what people would want them to be, but I think that there's plenty of opportunities there for LSU to take advantage of. This is also the first time, in my opinion, outside of the Auburn game of these bigger name matchups, that LSU does not have a clear quarterback, a clear worst quarterback uh, going into it. Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels both, could be a lot better.
Yeah.
But also, Jaden Daniels could be worse. Jaden Daniels gets a lot of undue I've been outward about it. He gets a lot of undue hate. He's not been perfect, but he's definitely the best chance this team has to win games. And I feel like honestly, if he plays like he did last week, they kind of have an advantage at the quarterback position this week, which would be huge. But also, yeah, that run game is gonna be massive. This game is gonna be won and lost on the ground. Both teams will be looking to establish the run. I don't know if it'll be the most high scoring game we've seen all year. Probably not. I would go to say no. But there is again an opportunity for LSU to have one of their better offensive games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of bouncing off that a little bit. This is going to be a game that I think is won and lost on the ground, like you said. Florida's allowing almost over 185 yards on the ground this season. That's among the worst marks in the SEC. It's one among the worst marks in the country, for that matter. But on the other side, they're also pretty proficient at running. I mean, they think they're averaging over 200 yards a game on the ground. I think this is going to be a situation where LSU's front seven is really going to have to show up.
They say Florida has a top 20 rushing offense and a bottom 20 rushing defense in the country.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, like there's some ways here for LSU to kind of have an advantage and to really focus on a couple of things within their run game and obviously on defense as well. But I think just John Emery, Josh Williams, Noah Kane, those guys are going to have their number called pretty consistently, I would imagine, in this game. And then you also got Jaden Daniels. And look, I mean, we've talked about Jaden a lot. I think I tend to agree with you. He's gotten some unfair flack in terms of the offense and how it's being run. But we do know that he has legs and he has mobility, and he's going to be able to use those to his advantage, I think, this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if they call some more design runs for him, some more RPO thrown in there as well. But I think look, the one thing that I just want to see from this offense is just some consistency earlier in the game. I mean, like the last couple weeks, Auburn, Tennessee, you've gotten down so much early, and you've had to really rely on the passing game for much of the rest of the final 3 or 2.5 quarters of these games. And you're just not having any balance really in your offense. And so I do think it's important for LSU to be able to move the sticks early, for them to get in scoring position, potentially knock in a couple field goals. If they get lucky with a touchdown early in the game, that would be swell for me. But look, it's going to be one of those trying to win it in the trenches kind of games, I think, for LSU. You hope to see some market improvement there, like I said, with the continuity on the offensive line by having Campbell back out there. We talked with Coach Kelly on Thursday, and kind of the rotation that they're thinking they're going to stick with Garrett Dellinger out. They're going to slide Miles Frazier over to left guard. They're going to slide Anthony Bradford in at right guard. And then you got Turner at center and Emory Jones at right tackle to kind of hone things out. And look, I think you're going to see a lot of blocking from Mason Taylor. You're going to see a lot of blocking from Cole Taylor. We'll see if Cole Taylor loses a shoe and what happens there. But, I do think there's going to be some opportunities here to really finesse Florida with the run game and really kind of shove it down their throats if they can just do a couple things different and kind of get some more consistency in their blocking patterns, what they're trying to do in terms of their shifting on offense, their motion on offense, I think can go a long ways in kind of confusing this Florida defense. So I'm going to be really interested on the ground and see how they really propel this thing forward.
Yeah, it's we're getting to the point where they've gotten 6 games together. Now's the time to really try and you kind of know what you have at this point in the season. So it's how the offense utilizes that talent, and I think to this point in the season, that's been one of the weaknesses, is putting the talent in the best place to succeed. And I think that's been a weakness. So now that they have more of an idea, the excuses start to lessen and lessen in terms of how you're using the players. So now, offense doesn't travel as well as defense. So we may be asking a lot for this team to go on the road and look completely revamped on offense. But, they still have talent on this roster. It's a big rebuild and a big turnaround, but they still have plenty of talent. And I'd like to see finally a game. Kayshawn started to have a little bit of success, got his first receiving touchdown last week. I'd like to see that continue to improve as well.
Yeah, I would too. And I think I kind of reached the point last weekend, as I think a lot of people did, where you say all the right things. You say you want to get him more involved, but you've got to go out there and show it a little bit more consistently. And I think that that's coaching, that's play calling, that's Jaden recognizing where he's at on the field, that's Kayshawn staying engaged in the game throughout the entire time. Everything kind of goes into that, and just kind of how you're scheming up this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack Besh's number gets called a little bit more. Jeray Jenkins is a guy who has really thrived in this rivalry over the last couple of years. I think 4 of his 10 or 11 touchdowns that he has in his career have come against Florida, including a couple last year at home in that big game that was the Ty Davis Price game. But I think, look, there's some opportunities here for LSU's offense to kind of get back on track and feel good about themselves heading into Ole Miss week. Which brings me to the defense. I think defensively, they're still figuring some stuff out in the secondary. It sounds like Jarek Bernard-Converse is still kind of looking at that safety role. They really like him back there. We asked Coach Kelly about Joe Fuchsia on Thursday, and he thinks there's going to be a bigger role for Joe Fuchsia this weekend. They called him I think the exact words were a closer to the box kind of safety. So a guy that they're going to be able to use around the line of scrimmage and hopefully make some big plays in the run game. It also sounds like they're going to have an expanded role for Harold Perkins, the freshman standout linebacker who didn't play a whole lot last weekend. We heard it was schematically, which is why they didn't get him on the field. Okay, but I think everybody's kind of in agreement that you got to figure out a way to get that guy on the field and use his athletic traits to his advantage. I kind of wrote in our 3 players to watch piece earlier this week. I think he'd be a great spy on Anthony Richardson, just a guy to keep an eye on him, make sure he's not getting out of the pocket and going down for huge gains. He's got that kind of speed and athleticism, I think, to be able to bring him down and really be a kind of a pain in Richardson's behind. So will be interesting to see kind of how they use these guys, how they dial up the pressures. I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about Richardson with his arm. I think the secondary, if there's anything that's going to beat the secondary, I think it's going to be the communication issues. They, for them. I think it's going to be there's a lot of advantages here for LSU to have some success and kind of have a get right game, just like offensively. I think this is a game where you can really all around see some advantages for LSU in terms of them getting back on the right track.
Yeah, and where this Florida team really thrives is they have pretty much a 4-headed monster in the running game. They have 4 rushers, including Anthony Richardson, all sitting around 40 rushes this year. No one really going past that. And they are all kind of like built differently, all kind of run a little bit differently. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the change of pace that they'll see a lot, because it's a heavy rotation of some really talented young running backs. And then Anthony Richardson, LSU, I've said it a million times this season. I feel like they only play mobile quarterbacks at this point, but they continue to have a ton of issues bringing quarterbacks down. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever seen Anthony Richardson, but he's like 6'4", 240, and incredibly hard to tackle. So if you're having issues tackling like Bo Nix and Robbie Ashford, you have to think you're going to have issues tackling Anthony Richardson and bringing him down. So that's really something that could end up killing this team. So that's why I put him in my players to watch, just because to see how LSU counters that and how LSU goes about bringing him down, because he's big and fast and strong. He has not had the best season throwing the ball, but he's still a threat running
Man,
it.
think back to that week 1 game where they had where he was looking like an early Heisman candidate, and it's really dropped off for him passing wise.
Oof.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat that in that first game he had something like two touchdowns to 0 picks, and now it's the last 5 games it's 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions or something like that. It's been rough for them through the air, and so LSU's secondary I think has you're going to have some opportunities to make some plays. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing comes down to which team takes care of the ball more on offense. We know LSU's done a really pretty good job of that this year so far. Turnover margin, they're very similar in turnover margin. I think LSU's forced 12 turnovers. Florida's forced 12 themselves. But they've also given it away, I think, 1 or 2 additional times than LSU's offense. So they're pretty much right there neck and neck in terms of turnover margin.
The big stat that stands out to me and where LSU has a chance to really make a difference in this game is the third downs is really bad for Florida's defense. They're allowing over half of the third downs to be converted, which is one of the worst in the country. That's really bad. There was I think one game they gave up 4 or 5 3rd and 15 pluses.
Yeah.
So just not great stuff out of the Florida defense. So if LSU can stay on the field and then get off the field on third down, it'll be huge.
Yeah, I was looking at kind of the first down defense earlier this week for a story, and Florida is not doing so hot in first downs. They've allowed 140 first downs to their opponents in the first 6 games of their season. I think like you said, a good chunk of that is coming on third down. LSU's done a little bit better job since that Florida State game of getting off the field on third down. They really weren't able to do it much against Auburn or really even last week against Tennessee. There really weren't many third down opportunities because Tennessee was getting so many big chunk plays on them. But I think you're absolutely right in that respect. I think LSU's offense is going to have an ability to move they're going to have a chance to move the sticks. And I think it really just comes down to execution. I mean, I really do. I don't think it's personnel. I'm not even sure it's all that much play calling. I think you've got to be able to execute early in the game. You've got to be able to keep Florida on its toes and move, kind of take the crowd out of it as much as you can on the road. That's always such a big cliche that's used for road games, but it's really true in this one. I believe you've got to be able to get Florida off the field and be able to move it on them a little bit on defense or on offense. So I'm right there with you. In terms of special teams, can't be much worse than what we've seen this year. So, I think, the biggest thing is I wrote this in our piece too, our predictions and kind of keys to the game and whatnot. Just don't beat yourselves. Don't give them points. That's kind of been the problem area for this group in terms of their losses. They've really given those teams a lot of momentum. The Florida States, the Tennessees, they've given them a lot of momentum early in the game, and they've gotten down big, and they haven't really been able to recover in some of those games. So, if you can get off the field on special teams with a fair catch, I'm totally fine with it. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't return 1 punt or return 1 kickoff in this game, just to kind of ease some feelings, ease the tension in terms of just the gasps. I mean, like it feels like every time LSU's back on a punt return now, you're just kind of holding your breath. And I think I mentioned this last week, and you just gotta you can't get to that kind of spot. You can't get in that space, and it's going to be really important, I think, for LSU to not shoot themselves in the foot in a game that's very, very winnable, very
important,
and
very important in this swing part of the season. 4-3 and 5-2 are 2 very different records,
especially when you're looking up the opponents that are coming up here. When you got top 10 Ole Miss and top 10 or top 5 Alabama next on the docket, you really want to be having as good a record as you can heading into those 2 games, because it could be a long couple weeks in Baton Rouge when those two teams come here. To say the
So,
least.
so going into the year, I had LSU sitting at around my goal record, like final record, was 7-5.
Mm-hmm.
Just go 7-5, make a little bit of an improvement in Brian Kelly's first year, and look good. Don't look terrible. I don't think that there's a question that the product that we've seen on the field this year, outside of special teams, has been a lot better than we have seen the past 2 years. Um,
Yeah,
in my opinion, overall, I
overall,
think
I
the
could
team
see
has
it.
been.
I mean, I think they caught a nice little hot streak there at the end of Orgeron's year last year, especially on defense. But I do think the LSU started out really well on defense this year too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think overall it's looking better,
Mhm.
and I think the future's brighter. But yeah, just go 7-5, and if you win this game, 7-5 is very doable. If you lose it, it becomes a lot harder.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I guess we can get into a couple of predictions here. I had this one. I'm gonna have to actually go back and look at it real quick. But yeah, I think this is going to be a game that I wrote in our predictions piece. It's going to come down to who controls the line of scrimmage on offense. Which defense can maybe make one or two more plays throughout the course of a game, whether it's a fourth down stop, whether it's a fumble, interception, some kind of momentum turning play. I think this is going to be a pretty close one, to be honest with you. I think LSU, when you're going on the road, any kind of road win is nice. We saw that with Auburn a couple weeks ago. Any kind of road win you'll take. I had LSU in my prediction 27-21. I don't think it's going to get into the 30s. I think this is going to be very much a game that's controlled on the ground, controlled by the clock. And again, I think it's just going to be coming down to which defense maybe makes one or two more plays at the end, which offense is able to kind of punch it in maybe in the fourth quarter. LSU I think has an advantage in that respect. I think they've been a second half team all year. So if you can kind of get into that second half and within 3, 4, 5, 6 points, I like LSU's potential in that kind of a game. But what about you? What are your predictions on this one?
It's going to be a one-score game. I think like 6 out of the last 20,
Mm-hmm.
5 out of the last 20 have been more than one touchdown,
Yeah.
which obviously leaves a lot of them being one-score games. I feel like this is destined to be another one. It's going to be low scoring. I feel like LSU will squeak it out. I'm going to go 24-21 for my final score. And most of that will come in the second half.
Yeah, I was seeing some over unders earlier this week that had this one at like 51.5, 52.5 in terms of over under. I don't think it gets that. I don't think it gets there in terms of just the total score of this game. I'm kind of
I,
sitting in the
the past
48.
couple the past couple years have been pretty high scoring.
Yeah.
But this is
If you watch these two teams, I don't
yeah,
think that anyone believes that it'll be that high scoring. I don't think we're getting a
no,
37-34 game with Cade York knocking in a 57-yard field goal to end it. But yeah, I mean, I think we're
I just don't see the high scoring game.
no.
And to be quite honest, if LSU wins this game, I feel much better about it being low scoring game.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, I think if LSU's winning this game, it's not going to be in some kind of shootout for sure. Okay, well, we can touch on a couple of the SEC games. We kind of teased it a little bit earlier this in the pod, but they got some big ones. I mean, there's some big games this weekend. Starting with Alabama, Tennessee at 2:30. That's going to be the CBS game. Really, really interested in this one, especially if Bryce Young can't play. Uh, Tennessee's got an advantage here. I think they are absolutely a for real team. Just getting a chance to watch them last week. I thought that their defense played a lot better against LSU, and their offense is something. It's really fun to watch. Honestly, as an unbiased look, they move fast. They are very effective in what they do and what they run in their system. I think they can absolutely give Alabama a huge test here, especially at home. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Tennessee wins this game. You also got Mississippi State, Kentucky later at night, starting around the same time LSU's game starts. But really, Alabama, Tennessee is the one I'm going to be watching with my popcorn out there. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just overall football this weekend is crazy. You got Bills, Chiefs, Saints, Bengals, which is of course for Louisiana fans bigger than it actually is because both those teams look pretty bad. But obviously I'm excited for that one. Penn State, Michigan is going to be awesome. Utah, USC I think is this week too. Yeah. A bunch of great games. Oklahoma State, TCU is another great one.
Yeah.
Bangers, bang after banger. As far as SEC goes, Tennessee, Alabama, obviously can't wait. A bit too many people are picking against Nick Saban for my liking. So if I was putting money on this game, I'd probably throw it over to Bama just because it feels weird that too many people are like, oh yeah, this team can. I feel like if you're going to beat Bama, people can't give you the respect going into it because I feel like Saban's good about like being like, okay, these people think that they can beat y'all, and I do. I do really like Jalen Milroe a lot. He's going to be very scary. He's not the best passer, but he does allow them to be a little bit more of a running offense, which I do think that they do well with. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. Obviously, Bryce Young's better and would give you a better shot to win this game. I'm a huge fan of Bryce Young. I think he's going to be very, very good for a long time at the next level. But I still think they have a chance with Milroe, just not as much of a chance.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be a great game either way. It should be awesome.
I think so too. Everything that we've seen in recent hours, days, it sounds like Bryce Young is back at practice and even in a limited capacity. I think he's probably going to do everything he can to be able to play in that game. So I probably would expect Bryce Young to play, just a gut feeling. I don't have any insider information on Bama, but I think he's, it sounds like he's progressing towards that decision. It'll be a fun weekend. Like you said, Joey B and Jamar Chase heading back to the Big Easy. They had some success there last time they played. And yeah, I'm going to be really excited for that one. I mean, I'm probably about as big a Burrow fan as you could probably find, but when you're a Saints fan, you're a Saints fan ride or die. And I think everybody in New Orleans is going to be rooting for the Saints.
It's just rough because that means one of either the Saints or the Bengals are going to be 2-4, and with a very bleak outlook. But the way I see it, better the Bengals be 2-4 because it's just 1 inch closer to them firing Zach Taylor, who should be in jail for war crimes at this point for what he does with that offense.
His play calling has been questionable to say the least. And man, yeah, you get that scenario. Who's out there.
It would be Hey, I know what you're saying. Sean Payton to the Bengals would be awesome. I'm all for it.
I mean, honestly, that would probably bleed into even more New Orleans fans becoming Bengals fans. Honestly, it would just add fuel to that fire if that happened. But all right, we'll get out of here. We'll enjoy a great weekend of football. We'll be back here on Sunday. Maybe we'll have Sonny in. We're not sure yet, but we'll definitely have me and Dylan recapping this one, looking ahead to next week at Ole Miss. But until then, we'll certainly see you guys soon.